John, what drew you to Fourth Church?
Oh my, a lot of things. Probably fundamentally, Sue and I came to Chicago, believe it or not, in the fall of 1959. I had recently graduated from college, and we were married, and I was a first year student at the Divinity School, University of Chicago. And we had never, either one of us, been here, and we just fell in love with the busy, wonderful big city and the Art Institute, and just packed away in the back of our minds, my gosh, if we ever had an opportunity to live in Chicago, wouldn't that be wonderful? Well, 1974 was an interesting time. I had a little church, two churches in Indiana, and we're about to move to a bigger church in Columbus, Ohio, kind of out of the Chicago area. And we took our kids back for one last look at the city. And I told this story a long time ago, but we went to Wrigley Field, and we went to the Hancock Building, and we went to the Lincoln Park Zoo. And the Hancock Building, it was built in 1969, so it wasn't very old. We were standing on the deck up looking out at the city, and right down, as you know, if you look straight down, there's Fourth Presbyterian Church. And my 10-year-old son, John, standing beside me, I showed him that little church, and he said, "Daddy, would you ever be a minister in a church like that?" And of course, at that time, that seemed to me not remotely possible. And I said, "No, John, I don't think I'm ever going to be. I don't think they'd want me to be a minister. I'm not sure I'd want to be there." And anyhow, we tucked that away. But interestingly enough, it came full circle not terribly long after that. I recall very distinctly getting a letter in 1984 from Clyde O. Bowles, who was chair of the search committee, saying my name had been suggested as one of probably hundreds of candidates. Would I be interested in pursuing it? And of course, I said, yes, of course. And the process proceeded, and we finally were interviewed and came to Chicago, and just fell in love. I was drawn to it because the city, I was just entranced with the idea of an active church in the heart of the city. I, of course, had heard about the tradition of the pulpit, and Elam Davies, and great preaching. I know about that. But in 1984, they just, after Elam retired, they wrote a very fine mission statement, which acknowledged that it was time for the church to really open itself up to the neighborhood and the city. And they were hoping to really expand the sense of mission and commitment to the city. And I found that very, very attractive. A church like Fourth Church would have found it very easy to close its doors and just look inward and try to hang on to the glories of the past. But clearly the leadership of Fourth Church in 84 was ready to move ahead, move into the new future. And I just thought that was challenging and wonderful. So as it happened, I got the job, got the call.
So did anything surprise you initially? And what were the biggest challenges you faced upon your arrival?
Surprises were probably life in the manse on Michigan Avenue. That was quite unlike anything either one of us had ever experienced before. With 5 children, 4 of them were already out of the nest. We had a junior high. And the first night we moved in, we were just awe of what was going on, and looking out the window at Michigan Avenue and Marshall Field right across the street. And dear Sue fixed a nice dinner and put candles on the table right in the windows sat in the windows in the dining room. And we sat down to eat, and I got a knock on the door, and I went out, and a woman said, "Do we need reservations for this restaurant?" And that sort of thing happened over and over again. Challenges with just getting my mind around this big congregation. Then it was about 2,800 members. And I had been pastor of a big church in Columbus, about 1,300 members. But this was a much more complicated operation, and large staff, Fortunately, there were some people who helped introduce me to Fourth Church, and chief among them, Jeanette Krennick. Dear Jeanette Krennick was my first administrative assistant, and Jeanette had been Elam's administrative assistant, and she knew everything and everybody, and that was just really helpful. And Dave Donovan was here, and John Boyle, and Morgan Simmons, and that group of people kind of took me by the hand and showed me the ropes and showed me where the holes were not to stumble into. And anyhow, that was that. The next challenge was, of course, building a staff. Fortunately, Dave and John Boyle was head of the counseling center at that point. Everybody, those people were staying, but we needed to assemble a group. And I want to mention, if I might, what an honor and blessing it was to me to be able to work with an incredible group of talented, smart, devoted clergy and lay people, and I will never ever forget them. And Dave and John Boyle, of course, and Morgan, and then Linda Loving was one of the first persons to join the staff, and that, of course, was a game changer. Linda won her way into everybody's heart almost immediately and became a dear and fast friend for Sue and me. Chris Jacoyan, Deborah Capp, Ted Miller, and Mission, John Wilkinson, Nancy Enderly, great people. And of course, Callum MacLeod. Callum came as an urban intern from the Church of Scotland during the year I was actually traveling as moderator of the General Assembly. Nancy Enderly was the one who kind of signed up Callum. And of course, the rest is history. Callum stayed for years and years and won his way into everybody's hearts, including ours. Adam Franchek, Ali Trowbridge, John Vest, Donna Gray, and Dana Ferguson made a huge impact on the life of Fourth Church. Rochelle Hunter, Sarah Joe, Sarche, Keith Harris, and then a group of wonderful lay people. Don Haggerty actually was our business manager for a while. Leszek Pitka. Leszek and I started at Fourth Presbyterian Church on the same day in the fall of 1985. So we have become partners and dear friends ever since. And Leszek has just added so much to Fourth Church. Allison Cooper, Rob Holben, Marty Sherritt, Sally Parnell, the administrative assistants that really guided me and ran the church. Everybody should know that. They were really in charge. Jeanette and Judy Simon followed her, and then finally Barbara Cleveland, who became just an absolute wonderful colleague and friend. So anyhow, I'm glad for your opportunity to name those people. As I look back, it's always with deep gratitude for the opportunity to work with such a great group.
During your tenure, obviously our membership grew, prompting the need for additional space. Can you describe those efforts to change, modify, and expand the facilities?
Well, the first attempt was in the early 90s. Have to remember, and a lot of our people would not know this, I think, because they've come to the membership since. But the configuration of the buildings when I arrived in 1985, right behind the main sanctuary building was I think a 1970s Christian education building. And it was really designed to house the extensive ministry with young adults. And it was important for it to not be seen to be too churchy. So it faced Delaware. The entrance was on Delaware. And to get from the sanctuary building, the main building, to Westminster House, which is where Sunday school classes were, and which was also where the only social space, a social hall, you literally had to go down a couple of steps in the back of the sanctuary and outside for a short period and up some more steps. So you had to go down, outside, up to even get to the building. And that's where the coffee hour was after church. So most people just couldn't be bothered with that. So we needed to do something about that. So I think it was 1992 or 3, we had a capital funds campaign. And it was the first one in a very long time. We restored the sanctuary, the gorgeous artwork on the ceiling, and we cleaned the walls and cleaned the floors and took all the pews out. The pews were wearing out, and replaced the pews with new pews. We wanted to have a day school. I wanted very much to have little children around. So we discovered in the process that if you're going to have a day school, you have to have access unimpeded by any barriers or any stairway. You had to be able to get babies in a crib rolled out within 100 feet or something like that. Well, the architects looked and looked and looked, and our building was just a nightmare when it came to that accessibility issue. So the result was the loggia. They designed the loggia, which allowed a slope down, so you could actually get from Westminster House. We connected the two buildings nicely, and you could actually get to the outside. So the loggia has become a very precious part of Fourth Church's buildings, and a wonderful gallery space, and it's just so gracious. But it really was the first reason for it was to be an accessibility ramp. So anyhow, we cleaned the sanctuary, removed all the pews, and for about 9 months, we worshiped every Sunday on folding chairs. So the construction people every week would shut their machinery down, and there were big tarps kind of covering the work, and scaffolding. We sat on the scaffolding and sat on rows of folding chairs, and somehow it all worked. We moved the offices out because we were doing some work in the parish house, and we rented what used to be the University of Chicago Business School. It's now a bank right across the street from the Hancock building. And we rented that for a very modest amount of money and moved the whole office complex and some church school classes and adult education in that building we were there for a year and a half, I presume. Weddings took place at St. James Episcopal Church. They graciously allowed us to schedule our weddings there and memorial services. And we moved the social service center to St. James temporarily. We built out a social service center for them in their building, and we moved our staff down there. So that was an exciting time, and that was the first attempt. We also added worship services. The old plan was one 11 o'clock service and one Vesper service. So we added a second service at 8:30, and a couple of years later, we added another service. So we had 8 o'clock, 9:30, and 11, and that allowed the congregation to comfortably grow, and the number of worshipers, of course, by that time was about double what it had been before. So those were the attempts to deal with the space issue, and of course, then the last effort, we were really looking to the future and built a beautiful new building that's now on that spot,
including the Buchanan Chapel. That's part of it.
Yeah, deeply, deeply grateful and honored. I back when you could do it, when the building was open, Sue and I would often on our walks just slip in and quietly go up and sit in that chapel and think about how grateful we are and how blessed we are to have been here, and the gorgeous modern sculpture memorializing dear Dana. It's just a very, very special spot for us.